Welcome to East Tennessee Pinball. Today I'm going to juice up the power supply on this dialed in. So if you're not aware, JJP has produced a new driver board it's in their new Godfather and I think maybe Toy Story, but it has some improvements to them. But the main difference is it's got these two big honking caps in the back of it, and those replace somewhat smaller caps that originally came in a lot of games like this dialed in. So a lot of people would describe this game as the flippers are a little bit squishy or a little bit soft, and they're not. I wouldn't say squishy or soft, but they're not as firm or as hard shooting as a comparable Stern. So JJP solution was that come up with a whole new board. I think they sell it for, I don't know, $400 or $500, and you can just grab them and throw them in there and they'll work fine. But really all you need to do is replace two caps. I got a bunch of caps here, and it's only two of them. I'm going to take two of these out here. You see how big, there's one of them right there. I'm going to solder them in the back of the board. But before I do that, I've got my scope hooked up, a little pocket scope, and I've got it hooked up to the power on the flippers, and I'm going to record what it looks like on this scope before and after, the voltage signal and how it drops before and after I put those caps in there, so we can see exactly how much difference it's making. I mean, there's kind of the qualitative sense of, well, it feels like it's flipping harder, but this is a real quantitative sense of exactly how much better it's performing. So like I say, I've got the positive hooked up to the double leaded side. It's hard to see all these extra wires. That's the double leaded side, so that's the power side of that coil. That's the flipper coil. And this game has three flippers. I guess it doesn't have a fourth. No, just the three. So I've got it hooked up on the power side of this flipper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the all in the stand, and I'm going to measure this voltage line. And the voltage right there is 70 volts. So I've got this says 2 volts, but it's on a 10-to-1. And so each one of those bars is 10. So it's actually measuring about 71 volts right now. Actually, I'll just do it right now. So that's it, 71. And if I actually need to stand, because I want to do both flippers. Okay, so here we are. It's recording, and again, it's scrolling across, and that's the 70. It's like 71 volts or something. So I'm going to flip just the right flipper. And you see those momentary drops in flipper in voltage. So that's really what we're trying to avoid, is to try to keep that voltage up as high as possible so we don't have those drops. And the capacitor does that because it has capacitance. It's almost like a little mini battery. So now I'm going to do it with both flippers, kind of a worst case. Well, I mean, you could have pop bumpers. You could have all kinds of other things. So it's not really a worst case, but it's a worser case than one flipper. So let me do both of them together. So it's not the same all the time, so it's probably my sampling rate is not high enough. So let me see if I can increase my sampling rate. And the other way, let's go the other way. See how this works. So that's pretty good. So you can see those. So each one of these little grids are 100 milliseconds. So it's a tenth of a second, which is, so that's how long it's dipping for about a tenth of a second. And it's dipping down, to roughly half the voltage, so it's down to 35 volts or something, or maybe even it's actually a little bit less than that, maybe. So that's what we're starting with. And so I'm going to see what things look like after I replace this cap, and I'll go through the process of replacing this cap too, because it's not going to be too bad. So to get in the back of the game, just take the back glass off. You got to pull these little wooden wedges up, slide these up, and then it's just, well, there we go. That's that side. There we go. And this TV just kind of swings out of the way. And I'm gonna pull this power driver board, and it's just 2 of these. I believe it's these top 2, or the 70 volts. I'm gonna verify that, but we're gonna take these 2 out and replace them with caps that are about, I think they're exactly twice as big. So I'm just gonna start by disconnecting all the connectors and take out a few screws. Actually, you don't have to take them out because they're keyholed, which I love that. And pull this board out, take to the bench, and swap out a couple caps. So I have the manual pulled up, get the left flipper and right flipper, and running across here, and they're on F701 at 705. So 705 is that one right there, if I get it to focus. Oops. No, it's not. Where's F705? Oh, there it is. Okay, there's F705. So it's basically. So here's the cap, one of the caps I took out. They're 3,300 microfarads and 100 volts. And the ones I'm replacing it with, which are the same as on the new board, the new replacement board is 6,800. So they're, just over twice as big. The only problem with it is they're bigger around. They won't fit down in there. And the leads on these bigger caps, generally, you're going to have a hard time finding any with long leads. Even if you did, they'd be flopping around. So the solution is to put some kind of a support underneath here. I've got a buddy that did this on his, and he showed it. He had just put a piece of, got it, so like, I don't know what he used, 3/4 inch PVC or something, cut a little, like a 1/2 inch section of it, or 3/4 inch section. So we had a little short cylinder, and then that was the support. And you're gonna have to solder on some legs onto these so they're long enough, and so that this can be floating out here in space. And you want it high enough so you're not on top of these fuses, so anybody in the future has to change a fuse, I can do that. Or if one of these rectifiers, if and when they go bad, you can still get this out without having to take the cap out again. So I'm going to solder on some leads, so make these 2 leads longer, and I've got to find something to set this atop of, non-conductive, that I can keep this up off the board. So I found a syringe, and I just made a couple of little cylinders like this, so they're going to fit down in like that, and then these will go about like that. So now I just have to get some leads to put in here. I'm probably going to grab some off another capacitor of more capacity, so that the wires are big enough, and solder them on here and put it all in there. I might glue this thing onto the board, or at least glue it on. I don't know. I don't know if I'll glue it to the board. I'll probably hot glue it onto there, at least that fitting, and then just solder the whole thing in there. I think that's what I'll do. Okay, so I got some extension solder on there. I'm just going to hot glue these on there and then stick them in the border and solder them in, and I'll be done. So I got those little plastic offsets, aka a section of syringe, glued on there. I could glue this in place with hot glue also. I don't think I'm going to. I'm just going to let the solder pads bear the brunt of this thing hanging off of them. Maybe I shouldn't, but they're pretty big pads, so that's what I'm going to do. So just make sure the polarity is correct. Just slide it in there and flip it over. Solder it in place. Well, my iron's not hot, so I'm gonna turn it on to heat it up. Okay, got my iron heated up, so we'll just solder these real quick. I'm gonna get it hot enough so it goes to the other side of the board, and I saw it suck down in there, so I feel good about that. I put quite a bit on there, so I feel comfortable. That went to the other side of the board because all the connections, you look, these don't go to anything on this side of the board. It's all on the other side. So you got to get it hot enough to suck down the vias to solder on the other side. So I'm going to turn these off, and I'll do the same thing for there, and then we'll throw it in the game. Got both these on there. They're pretty secure. They're overlapping a little bit, but I'm pretty sure I could wiggle those out of the way. Just put a little pressure, and they're out of the way so that can come out. And those are clear, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to pop this in the board, crank it up, and I'm going to roll. We'll see if what the oscilloscope tells us. So I got the board back in the game. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do both flippers, and we're on the same time scale and the same voltage. And I measured the voltage is still 71 volts. So here we go. So I believe the width of those are a little bit skinnier, and I think the depth is a little bit less. So basically the area under the curve, which depth, is proportional to the power that the coil is consuming. So I'm going to do a side-by-side. I'm going to take a screenshot of the before and the screenshot of after and try to come up with like an actual percentage. To try to do this quantitatively, figure out exactly how much extra power we're getting out of the coil now with the new caps. All right, so before I analyze all this data, I'm just going to play a game, see if I can tell any difference, because I played enough. I think I'll be able to tell a difference. If there's a significant difference, I should be able to tell, right? If I can't tell, then by definition, it wouldn't be significant to me. I would say yes, there's a difference. By the way, I actually had the flipper power turned up a moderate amount, not real high, but a little high because I wasn't happy with the strength. Backhand, that flipper shot pretty easy. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say it's 22.35.5% better. Huh. All right, so I've got a couple of scans here. This is the after scan. So this is one of the scans I did after I put in the cap, and you can see, so each one of these is 20 volts. So that's 20, 40, 60, a little more than halfway up here. So that's 71 volts. And you press the button, voltage comes down, so it comes down to 40. And then it comes back up and it gets to a lower level, and that's because the holding circuit is still on. So instead of the 71, we're like, I don't know, 65 or something because the holding circuit. So, and the time it took for the flipper to get up to the holding circuit is, so this width here, you see, is 100 milliseconds. So that's a tenth of a second, and it started about 1 dot after and ended about 1 dot before the end. So it's about 0.06 seconds. So that's what it looks like after I put the cap in. I'm going to show you the before, and it's not what I thought. So somebody else is going to have to tell me what's going on here, because so here's the before, and I found one that was basically started at the same time relative to the bars here. So you see, first off, it's all hairy looking, it's all wiggly, and that's really the only big difference. If I zoom in here a little closer, move my camera a little closer, you see all these striations. So it's the voltage is oscillating, so there's some resonance, but really it drops down to about 40. I mean, the very minimum it drops down a little bit less, but really that's wagging back and forth. So I wouldn't say that the average drop is 40, it's because it's going back and forth. The average drop is, I wouldn't say the average is below 40. The average drop is about 40 with a little tail digging down deeper. And the time for the whole thing to occur is about 0.06 seconds again. So they look very similar with the exception of this wiggling back and forth all the way across. That capacitor should take out that kind of resonance, and it did. What I was expecting was to see this whole signal be diminished and stay higher. It did not do that. I will say it definitely flips harder. I mean, that's a little objective. It's very objective, but that's my conclusion. So Y'all can come up with your own. So somebody with a education in electrical theory, they can maybe comment and describe why or why not these little micro oscillations might be causing an issue with flipper performance. And again, maybe I didn't have I've got a little cheapo pocket oscilloscope. I don't have a really good one. It works for most stuff I need for working on a pinball. It probably wasn't good enough for doing this. I probably still didn't have my scan rate high enough. If I'd had my scan rate high enough, these oscillations I might have missed it. They might be even bigger if I'd had this at 100 milliseconds, made it like 10 milliseconds or 1 millisecond, or something much smaller so I could see it better. So I don't know, y'all. If somebody can describe why or why not these oscillations might affect flipper performance, please comment. I'd love to hear what it is. So that's it for this video. Definitely flips better. I couldn't explain the differences I saw. I was expecting to have a less area under the curve, but the area under the curve was about the same, but there was basically a lot more noise in the signal before I put the caps in. So again, if somebody can explain that to me and to everybody else, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I'll say adios. If you like the videos, click like and hit the subscribe button. What do you think, Django? He'd rather look outside. Adios, guys.